Good morning and welcome to our webinar. My name is Tracy Kootenay and I am the Chief Administrator for the IAFP. Before we get started, I just wanted to let you know that we will be taking questions at the end of the presentation. You can ask questions in two ways. One, if you have a microphone on your computer, you can ask a question verbally by clicking on the hand icon. I will call your name and let you know when the line is open so that you can ask your question. Otherwise, you can type your question into the question box as you think of them, and we'll answer them at the end during the question period. I would like to take a second to thank Russell Todd, a longtime RFP, for organizing today's event, and would like to ask Russell if he could please introduce today's speakers.
Good morning, everyone. I think this is going to be a good one. We originally put out the presentation as a point of using the foundations to help you planners, especially work with gifting strategies for your clients and succession planning challenges. Of course, in the meantime, COVID-19 kicked in, and so the change has been slightly altered a bit to say how you can using community foundations to advise clients in these unprecedented times. It has application because Calgary Foundation started in 1955, but there's 119 of these foundations, community foundations across Canada. So today's content will be relevant to almost everyone. Our two speakers today is Janine Webb, the Vice President of Donor Engagement at the Calgary Foundation, and she's going to talk about how the foundation supports planners in doing their work with clients and the things they bring to the table. Alison Schultz is the Vice President of Capacity Building, and she's going to provide us with a comprehensive overview of the current crisis in the charitable sector. So without further ado, I turn it over to our speakers.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having us. I am Janine Webb, and Alison is also live on her mic, so we might bounce back and forth between slides and our comments, and we really look forward to answering some questions at the end. We're very appreciative of this time. And yes, we did modify what would have been a fairly focused on business presentation to one that still incorporates all of the same pieces to let you know how it is that community foundations in general can provide support, but also what it is that's happening right now. And hopefully you will be inspired to draw from whatever community foundation is closest to you. So without further ado, what is community foundation? So I mean, I know that everybody's familiar with these great organizations that live within their cities, but actual community foundations across Canada have three particular areas of focus. Community foundations, we have a responsibility to shift power. So we start there. We want those who best know the needs of our communities to make the decisions about the future of those communities. And so community foundations bring diverse voices to the table where important decisions are being made. Community foundations are also about strengthening communities. So resilient communities are strong communities, and investing and supporting all facets of community and civic life is at the core of who we are. And the last point is taking a long view. So we have the opportunity with an endowment model to take a very long view, which is incredibly important when you look at what's happening now. We have the capacity to work nimbly and collectively towards a systemic change. And again, never before has our model been tested so much by so many. And a little bit more on that long view. So what exactly does an endowment model entail? Well, it goes actually far back, and it was a professional advisor, funny enough, that had the vision to be able to create something. He was a lawyer, and community foundations, there was a large amount of money that were being left through bequests and wills to charitable causes that had no longer existed or no longer reflected evolving values in the community. So Fred Goff was an estate attorney, and he was very frustrated with a number of wills that left large sums of money for charity, but it encumbered it with the conditions that directions that proved so limiting that the bequest wind up being completely useless to the community. So he spent years searching for legal ways to comply with these directives, fighting court battles, and finally, some of these, funny enough, some of these stated uses were to be used only for an orphan asylum for girls whose railroad workers' fathers died on the job. Obviously not relevant 100+ years after that was written. And then an endowment for watering troughs for horses. There's also directions that go back hundreds of years that, forbid supporting women or ethnic or religious minorities as well. And so how is it that people, are going to be able to distribute these wills and do anything with this money? So Goff was ahead of his time, and he actually foresaw a way to have a large sum of money and to use it for the good of the community, not knowing what the greatest need of the community 50 years from now, 100 years from now. So he created the endowment model and the community foundation model, and it basically places in our hands money from years and years ago, hundreds of years ago, because we're here and our successors will be here, and through the years we'll be able to determine what is done with this money and make it useful for the people of each succeeding generation. And yes, there are 191 of us, community foundations across Canada, and it's a powerful force. All told, we're granting about $4.5 billion each year and making sure that money lands firmly in the hands of those hardworking charities that we need now more than ever. And each of us across Canada is focused on our own unique needs. So we're focused on our local community. The little graphic in the first slide is to address needs we cannot yet see and help people we will never meet. Well, let me tell you, this quote has never been more poignant. Today, we find ourselves in an unprecedented time, a global pandemic that no one could ever have predicted. COVID-19 spares no organization, no community, and no individual. We are being called upon to assist organizations in every corner of the nonprofit sector. And we've had to adapt very quickly to immediate needs, but have also a need to plan ahead for recovery and inevitably rebuilding. We are truly in uncharted territory right now, and Allison will chat a little bit more about this later in the presentation.
Thanks, Janine. So our why do community foundations exist? And our purpose really is threefold. And the first is to inspire philanthropy. And our goal and our purpose is to work with donors to inspire and to inform them in their philanthropy. We want to share our community knowledge, and we have the ability to be in a position where we can learn about charities and learn about the needs of community, and that we can then share that knowledge with donors to support their philanthropic work. And we really want to engage not only just the donor themselves, but to engage their family members. And looking at that endowment model going on for generations, we hope that we're able to transfer those values and to inform and to educate philanthropy, for generations. We know that every donor's charitable goals look very different, and it's imperative to us that we personalize giving in a way that's meaningful for all donors and, for their families. So we often act as conveners between charities, professional advisors, and donors. We facilitate meaningful conversations between the charities and the donors. And with deep roots specifically in our Calgary community, amassed with over 65 years of being here, we have the knowledge and the expertise to help to build the capacity in the sector while helping professional advisors and their clients to make really informed decisions. Secondly, we are here to support the charitable sector, and we do that predominantly through our granting operations. We have an application-based granting program where we consider ourselves to be, and the term is used, of 360-degree grantor, which means essentially that if you have charitable status and you're in good standing with CRA across the country, then you have the ability to receive a grant from a community foundation. But it's also important for us to recognize too that donors and community members want us to measure the impact of our grants. So a number of years ago with community consultation, we created 5 vital priority areas in Calgary. Those include strengthening relations with Indigenous communities, reducing poverty, encouraging mental health, living a creative life, which is essentially the arts, and pursuing a sustainable future, which is a focus on the environment. And through these priority areas, with the grants that we make through our donors and through our application-based programs, we're able to see how are we shifting the community? Are we achieving goals? Are we able to measure the impact to improve the health of our community? We have a number of granting programs at our community foundation. And again, this is very similar to community foundations across the country. Because again, one of our goals is to really engage and impact community. And so we want to do that in a way where we have very small granting programs that are specifically for neighborhoods and initiatives that community members want to do. So things like starting a community garden or painting a mural in a neighborhood to brighten it up and clean it up. Right through to granting programs that support community initiatives, that support partnerships and mergers, right through up until grants that are a couple $100 million, which we call our major and signature, which are capital-based initiatives predominantly that are transformational, not only to the organization, but to the community to which that organization resides, and how is it shifting the way that work is being done. So we really try to engage the use of volunteers to make informed decisions, people on the ground, people with lived experience, to be able to help us to figure out where are the best places to put the money that we grant out every single year. In total, at Calgary Foundation, we grant out about $48 million a year to almost 1,000 charities. And again, while we are focused in Calgary, if a donor has an, charitable causes that they want to support across the country, then we're able to facilitate those as well. And thirdly, endowment building. And again, that talks about that long approach that we're looking at both supporting today and also in the future that we can't see. And so our goal with the endowment building is to maintain capital while maximizing the amount distributed to community on an annual basis. And this remains our goal. So even though we've had, some recent losses and impact from the financial crisis that's happening right now, the endowment model is built to withstand that current financial crisis. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in the presentation later about the endowment model and how that really impacts and creates sustainability to support the community over the long haul.
Okay, thanks, Allison. So what does this mean for your clients? Well, community foundations are ideally positioned to help you develop and deliver customized giving solutions for your clients, because everything we do really starts with your clients' why, not ours. And that's really important. I think some feedback that I often get over the years, or have gotten over the years, is that professional advisors want to ensure that a community foundation is not going to impose their priorities. All community foundations certainly have our priorities, and we get that from the community, as Allison just talked about, our vital priorities. But we will not impose those on a family or individuals that have their own ideas of or charitable goals or passions. So we actually act to inspire. We inspire philanthropy. So we start with identifying appropriate fund vehicles, and we can handle complex assets. Most community foundations can accept gifts that some charities cannot or cannot easily. We offer extraordinary flexibility and support, and we have our eye on the diverse and changing needs of both the donors and the communities. When I come to a table, I represent both. My background is prior to the Calgary Foundation was over 11 years in the charitable sector. I was a director at a local homeless shelter for children and their families. So when I sit down at a table, I can bring the knowledge of complex gifting, but also the voice of the charitable sector. We can talk to donors about admin costs. We can have real conversations about what things look like on the front lines. And donors can talk to us about it in a total environment of neutrality, where they can talk about their concerns about investing in sector and, and bring forward things they wouldn't be able to bring forward to the charities that they love. And we can have those communications because we represent both. We are, and our many community foundation brothers and sisters across Canada, allow donors to create their own giving and granting timeline. And so we simplify the integration of philanthropy into their lives, both living and in the future into an estate plan. Personalized service is what community foundations pride ourselves on. And so being able to provide these tailored philanthropic consultation and expertise, there's many of my colleagues and many across the country like me who come from the nonprofit sector, who have experience with charities, and can bring forth perspectives that donors would, really benefit from, and professional advisors as well. You are all donors and advisors to clients who are donors, but those clients also are board members of organizations, and we realize that there are many levels of involvement in the charitable sector with those that you touch and yourselves as well. And so we work very hard to bring everything we have to offer to the table. So together, well, Calgary is a fairly entrepreneurial city. Calgary Foundation, of our approximately 1,300 funds, about 50% are donor advised. And so a donor advised fund is really the founder and the donor that makes the recommendations and the advisements. The grants go out to wherever it is that they are passionate about, as long as they are qualified donees. We have on top of that about 160 donor designated funds, again, really reflecting that in our city anyway, Calgarians want to follow their hard-earned dollars into the community. They want to designate it to specific charities that they love. And Calgarians in particular tend to grant to organizations within our own city. While there are a number of our donors that do grant internationally and across Canada, we find something unique about Calgarians in particular is that they do like to give at home. While the vast majority of our funds are endowed, we still do remain responsive in that we have flow-through funds, about 61 million. And this, again, some of the numbers will be specific to our Calgary Foundation, but the story will be the same across the country. That we do know that community foundations find that donor advised funds are the most, and donor designated are the most popular amongst our donors, because they give the families and the donors the ability to direct those funds, or to advise and recommend is the language we use. So business succession. Well, I guess giving away money is easy, but doing it responsibly and effectively is actually quite difficult. So when you work with a community foundation within the context of company business owners, can actually involve younger generations in those charitable decisions, delegate some of the work to them. Philanthropy is a really great way to develop leadership skills, critical thinking, interpersonal skills. I've seen it year after year after year, that families that come to the table as both business owners and parents, thinking business succession, but also succession in general, they get philanthropy, they use philanthropy, and they lean on the community foundation as a way of facilitating those skills that can later be applied to their business. Professional relationships. Community foundations have a very broad reach into the community, and also into the PA community, because we are working with all of a host of designations. We actually can pull together the knowledge and share this knowledge amongst the community. So we are a great resource, and hopefully, again, no matter where you're logging in from, you would see your community foundation as a resource to connect with others around the topic of strategic philanthropy. And planning knowledge, well, since 1955, Calgary Foundation has been helping advisors to align your clients' goals with their charitable goals, their financial goals with their charitable goals. And we are truly experts in charitable giving. We've had a lot of years to practice this, and we have worked with complex estates and gifts of insurance, both as beneficiaries and as owners of policies. We've taken gifts of publicly listed securities, gifts of closely held, publicly traded securities, and not as often, but certainly have the ability to accept gifts of privately held company shares as well. gifts of real estate, donations in kind, like artwork, and just the other day spoke with a gentleman about, gifts of jewelry, things that community foundations, it varies from spot to spot as to what it is that they can assist, but certainly what is common is the knowledge of how to do these things. We've been doing them for so many years, and with the 1,300 funds that we have, each one of those funds has been unique and come with a very unique, almost every one of them comes with a unique family situation that we have to guide people through. Talking a little bit about that, just a quick slide on what that visually looks like is that community foundations come to the table as philanthropic advisors. So this is our area of expertise. We are not tax specialists. We are not financial planners or estate counsel, nor are we wealth managers. We are philanthropic advisors. And so we work in partnership with all of you and more to provide the resources that a family needs to strategically, this is important, and effectively guide their charitable investments. So when we all share our collective knowledge, without a doubt, the donor family benefits. How can we serve you? I mean, we're not going to get into the nuts and bolts. Every foundation is different in terms of fund minimums and how it is their fund structure works. But really, overall, we make supporting the community easy and straightforward. Now is the time. So again, this is unprecedented times right now, and donors are looking at their portfolios and they're very worried about those, but they are perhaps in more than equal measure worried about their communities. And so we specialize in this area. We have years of experience matching donors' wishes with the organizations and causes that are important to them. And again, I reiterate, that are important to them, not to us. We help with testamentary will language. You can work with a community foundation to be able to capture all of your charitable goals through a future fund that lives outside of the will, so that you don't have to actually do a codicil every time you want to update or you add a charity or take a charity out. It's there are no cost changes when you're working with a foundation to plan for the future. Family philanthropy is one of the areas of expertise that most community foundations pride themselves on. Many families choose Calgary Foundation as an alternative or a complement actually to setting up a private foundation because of our connections to the community and simply because it's administratively easy. Together, we explore what connects them as a family unit, interests, values, motivations. We have the knowledge and the experience of bringing forth some of these more sensitive conversations and know how to handle them. And we can certainly sit at the table with you and play that role. We engage everybody in the family in their pursuit of their charitable goals. And to do this, we actually have a whole host of tools, including a family philanthropy guidebook. And the tools will vary from foundation to foundation, but I know all of us have a focus on family philanthropy. And our membership here in Calgary, we offer a membership to the National Center for Family Philanthropy, which is a US-based organization. But we do allow all of our donors and set up accounts for professional advisors who we're working with as well, so that they can themselves access webinars and thousands of curated materials on family philanthropy, so that we can help build your toolbox. And we invest a tremendous amount into training our staff on family meeting facilitation, hosting philanthropy and values-based conversations, which is a skill. It's not a natural thing to sit down with strangers and get them to open up about, their most important values. And you certainly know of this work because you're doing very similar work in getting people to talk about money, which can be very difficult conversations as well. So a lot of people will bring us to the table, as you saw in that last visual, because this is our area of expertise. We do personal research for donors and arrange meetings and tours, as Allison mentioned before. So what we do know is that and I'll reiterate one last time, which is we did a survey just recently, and it was our second since 2009. And the purpose was to discover really how we can better assist advisors in guiding your charitable giving. The results highlighted the trust that professional advisors had in the Calgary Foundation and in, community foundations in general. But it definitely revealed that advisors are deeply committed to the personal philanthropy of their clients, and that they wanted to make sure that there were no attempts to redirect the client's personal charitable goals or impose the foundation's own priorities where there was no synergy. This was not appreciated. And so this is something we're ardently committed to, even in these exceptional times. While our communications with donors right now implore them to grant fully and to consider granting sooner than later, at no time will you see from us, have we or will we, Calgary Foundation in particular, throughout this pandemic and beyond, impose our priorities over your clients or theirs. Their passions, their values, their principles, and their family legacy goals guide our granting hand always. I have a pretty awesome team. Miss Allison is joined us on this slide as Vice President Capacity Building, but the remainder of the team are on the donor engagement team. And my team stewards basically exactly what we said. We assist donors with their charitable goals and professional advisors with their needs as well. So most community foundations will have a team in place that will provide personal services to donors. This is where we get to know, the families, figure out what it is that they need. But something that is less known about community foundations, we also have a robust student award program. So we know that scholarships and named scholarships and certainly recognizing the power of education to change lives is important to people. And so most community foundations will also be able to help navigate this very complex world. There are currently at the Calgary Foundation 200 student award funds that we administer in-house, and they provide over 500 awards annually to post-secondaries locally, provincially, and across the country. And they can be quite personal, scholarships that were set up in memorial or scholarships that were set up in celebration. So while most of the majority of students are awarded directly by their educational institutions, we work with educational institutions. Calgary Foundation also does its own awards, and a lot of community foundations do. So that's another point. Now, an important person in my team is Grace Chu, our Gifts and Estates Associate. So Grace comes with a great deal of expertise on estates, and this is very important. As the years go by, estates have gotten more and more complex, and charities do not have the in-house, not all charities I should say, have the in-house acumen and ability to process some of these and to know what it is to do next. And so community foundations are actually reaching out to charities to offer our expertise. Allison's work is about capacity building and helping charities do such things. But in-house, we actually have the ability to work with some more complex situations and can certainly advise accordingly. So where do we draw our knowledge? Well, as an advisor, you might provide guidance to clients who are just beginning to navigate this idea of philanthropic giving. But we know for sure that there is a gap in knowledge about charitable giving among financial planning experts. This is shown in both the recent national surveys, as well as surveys conducted by the Calgary Foundation recently. We want to bridge this gap. And so we recently created our advisor engagement committee. And if you look at community foundations in your neck of the woods, depending on where you're logging in from, you will also probably find a group that is there to assist as well. There's 6 members you see here bring together just a wealth of expertise. And so part of this presentation for our Calgary friends is that this committee's role is to educate you and your peers on how to introduce philanthropy into their practices. So they advise me from all of their different sectors, and then we create a strategy on how it is to help professional advisors and their clients. Jim Brownlee is our committee chair, and he's 35 years experience. He has a deep connection to the financial service industry and thousands of other professional advisors he oversees. And he's currently vice president, Canada Life Assurance Company. He always keeps one toe dipped in professional advising on financial, retirement, estate, and philanthropic planning. So he's an excellent committee chair. I draw from him often. Haider Hassan has spent nearly 15 years in high-level roles related to finance and advising before landing in his current role as CEO of Immigrant Services Calgary. So another one of us that has had his foot firmly planted in financial advising, and now is at the table of the nonprofit sector. 2 weeks ago, interestingly enough, Haider was named one of the 15 members of the Premier's Council on Charities and Civil Society. So this is a group that are bringing their in-depth knowledge and experience to the table to advise our Premier in Alberta on the government's response to COVID-19. So the council will help ensure that civil society and organizations are supported throughout this time. Blaine Lennox is an incredible asset on our community with over 24 years in the investment industry, 18 of them with Jarislowsky Fraser. And he's also currently the chair of our Calgary Foundation Investment Committee. Melanie McDonald is Vice President, Regional Director with BMO Trust Company, and she's using her expertise for trust and estate solutions. So she's long been involved with community service and has much advice to offer professional advisors on how they can engage with clients on philanthropic giving. Susan O'Brien, Senior VP and Wealth Advisor for BMO Nesbitt Burns. She is an exemplary advocate and ambassador of philanthropy, has incorporated strategic philanthropy seamlessly into her client practice, and absolutely would host conversations about how others can do that. And Elizabeth Peters is our current board chair and also has been in the financial field for decades. She's a portfolio manager and formed her own company in '91, Liberty House Asset Manager, managing private client portfolios. She also is a fourth generation donor advised family advisor with the Galvin Family Trust, administered the Calgary Foundation. So she often speaks with both lenses of being a family that has had a trust or a fund at the Calgary Foundation for years and has involved 4 generations now in that planning.
So we want to shift a little bit. Earlier, I talked about one of our priorities and a part of our why was about building endowment. And so we want to talk now about the power of endowment, which I think is more important now than ever before with what's going on currently in our country and in the world. And there's so much debate today on the relevance of endowment models, especially in a time of crisis. And the dilemma is choosing between the urgent present needs versus the community's future needs and needs that we don't know and we're not aware of yet. And at our March 2020 board meeting, our board meets quarterly, and so at this most recent one, it was held by a teleconference because of what's been going on in community. But we needed to really examine, as an organization, should we be making one-time increases in our grant distributions in light of the needs of our community? But after considerable discussion, the board landed in consensus on staying the course, and that course being 4% distribution of our capital as of the end of December 31, 2019. And by using this December market value, it actually means that $4 million more will be granted out this year over the last year. And interestingly, in 2008, when we experienced the crisis of the global market crash, our board deliberated if we should grant less in the face of a 17% loss to the endowment. And that discussion at that time with the board also ended with the same consensus to stay committed to our distribution policy. And the Calgary Foundation granted 5% that year, and at a time when many foundations were pulling back completely. So the endowment has returned and subsequently grew from that. And as a community foundation, we were established to build and preserve a capital fund to serve the current needs and to serve the needs of the future that we cannot imagine and help the people that we will never meet. And this pandemic is certainly in that category of one that we could never imagine. This pandemic has resulted in needs that are overwhelming, and all the assets of Calgary Foundation could not even begin to meet the demand and each day of the needs that are constantly increasing in our community alone. And the end is not yet in sight. And this will take powers of all levels of government and all parts of our society to address. And each one of us will be looking for the best way that we can extend ourselves and our resources to respond to what's happening. So the power of endowment and the endowment model is evidenced really in this slide. And a gift of any size into an endowment can result in grants of almost an equal amount within 20 years, while having the market value of anywhere from 40 to 60% more than the original gift. Made up of more than 1,000 funds like this, the Calgary Foundation is poised to continue to have profound impact in our community this year and in the future. So, you may ask, how is our endowment doing currently? And recently, the market volatility has been significant and could continue for the foreseeable future. And the Calgary Foundation went from just being an endowment of just over $1 billion at December 31 to an endowment of $930 million in less than 3 weeks. And while the volatility is unnerving, Calgary Foundation's endowment is well diversified and built for the long-term resilience across several economic scenarios. And over the years, Calgary Foundation has made important progress towards building a robust and diverse portfolio of public and private market securities. The Calgary Foundation remains confident that the endowment's asset allocation strategy and its ability to continue to meet the investment objectives of the foundation while achieving long-term performance results will inspire stakeholder trust. Now, this confidence stems from a robust and disciplined investment process and governance executed and overseen by our knowledgeable team of experienced investment staff and volunteers. We continue to be in close discussions with our investment managers, given the uncertainty about the current economic situation. And our managers are preparing a wide range of potential scenarios and stressing the importance of focusing on the long-term outcomes. And our managers remain focused with investing in strong, well-run businesses while ensuring portfolios are well-diverse and resilient. And as a long-term investor, Calgary Foundation agrees with this message and is reactive tactical changes that would be greater to cost to the endowment over the long term. And our Chief Investment Officer, our in-house CIO, Dan Langlois, likes to say, the middle of the storm is not the time to fix your ship. And so, we've talked a lot about, this is unprecedented times, and, we speak, a lot about what's happening in our community, but the response to COVID is happening right across the country. So we wanted to spend a little bit of time today to share with you what's going on in the sector. So Imagine Canada is an organization that I'm sure many of you have heard of, and it's the national body to support charities and nonprofits, and it builds and enriches our communities. It does advocacy work and just ensures that that there's discussions around the health of our communities. And right now, they are projecting that the 3 months of mandated social distancing and economic downturn associated with COVID-19 will cause charities across the country to lose $9.5 billion and lay off more than 117,000 employees, of which the vast majority are women. In a survey of charities in Calgary between March 17 and March 19, so the very beginning stages of social distancing and isolation, it was identified by the United Way and partnering organizations that the most critical needs for vulnerable Calgarians was food security, accessing emergency services online, which is access to the intranet, childcare for people who were deemed to be working essential services, access to mental health services, and access to sanitary products and cleaning supplies. In the same survey, it was also found that the most critical needs for agencies or charities serving these vulnerable populations was maintaining the health and well-being of their staff, keeping essential services going at a time when they're needed most, planning for the operational sustainability in a virtual work environment, responding to domestic violence, responding to the needs of homeless population, and meeting food security needs. And in the midst of this COVID-19 crisis, our local charitable community is deeply impacted, and many on the front lines serving these critical needs will continue to see an increased demand on their services. Others have had to cancel events, cease ticket sales, or close the doors of their charities entirely. So in response to that, Calgary Foundation has established an urgent needs website where organizations can go directly to the website and fill out the list of their most pressing needs emerging from COVID-19 and are able to share their stories with donors and community. And then from that, donors can be connected directly to those charities so that they're not working through us, but are connecting directly to support them in a very quick fashion. We have also launched the Pandemic Recovery Fund to support charities impacted by the pandemic over the short and long term. And we recognize, again, looking at our knowledge of community and looking at the past 65 years, we know that the needs are not just right now. And so we, like many funders across the country, are looking at several pockets of our support. So first is the immediate relief, providing support to the front lines. But we're also starting to look at what does recovery look like? How do we get organizations up and running when we're back to being able to have more freedoms and to limit our social distancing, but to get back into community? So, when the organizations are facing financial uncertainty from the loss of revenues over several months, how do we support them in their recovery? And finally, we're starting to have the conversations about building resiliency and recognizing that this is an unprecedented time where we're not rebuilding what we had before, but we're coming into a new way of being, and that the systems that we're working in, the systems that we're living in have been destroyed, and that we're going to have to create them to better respond to the needs with limited resources. And so as funders, we're looking at how do we support that to build resiliency, to build capacity, to respond from changes like this. And again, recognizing that many of you are from across the country and not just in Calgary, we wanted to make sure that you were aware that, again, we're, as mentioned before, we're part of a network of 192 community foundations across the country. And we all operate on very similar models to that of what we've talked about at Calgary Foundation today. And so again, like many organizations, we're partnering together with other granting organizations such as the United Way to ensure that all organizations with urgent needs have access to funding support. So within the first 2 weeks of this pandemic, our urgent needs page shared the financial need for 176 charities in our community that had listed over $28 million in emergent needs. And that was just within the first 2 weeks. We're now entering week 5 of this pandemic. And so the needs have grown substantially. The number of charities have grown substantially with expressing, the stresses that they're facing. And it's critical for us to note that as community foundations, we are not just focused on support within our urban centers, but that we're supporting rural areas as well. And that includes our First Nations populations. All community foundations work very closely with an organization called the Circle on Philanthropy, a national-based organization that helps to foster and strengthen relationships with our Indigenous populations. And by connecting with the Circle and with our local First Nations leaders, we're able to mobilize support on and off reserve land. And with the federal government having committed $315 million to respond to the needs of our Indigenous populations in this time, we are confident that we're going to see the needs that are going to grow beyond that money, what it will be able to support across the country. And so we're very focused to ensure that we are working together with our Indigenous populations to meet those needs. And again, as you know, the environment is changing on a daily basis and almost an hourly basis, and new opportunities for support are coming up frequently. And so again, for instance, in Alberta, as recently as Easter Sunday, our provincial government offered up $2 million to match new donations to charities across the province through United Way and community foundations. So working with your own local community foundations, most of the foundations have response pages on their front pages of their website that you can go to identify how are they supporting community, what are the needs, and what are the gaps that are existing that need to be filled. And many of our community, fellow community foundations welcome that support and welcome those conversations to ensure that whatever you are seeing, whatever your clients are asking, that we're able to meet those needs.
Well, I think we actually just kind of wrapped up right on time to afford ourselves about 15 minutes, just shy of 15 minutes for questions, if there are any.
Okay, first of all, thank you very much to both Janine and Allison for your presentation. And also, I just wanted to say that we appreciate you being able to change your format from an in-person lunch and learn to a webinar for us in these times. I'm sure it took a little bit of planning for you to have to change your whole presentation.
It's not a problem. We do miss seeing your lovely faces, though, I must say.
So we do have a couple of questions. The first one is from Pam Magyar. She is asking, what charities do you expect will have the greatest need as we understand the impact of COVID?
I would say right now, what we are seeing is that those charities that are serving the most vulnerable populations, so the homeless populations, immigrant, new Canadians, and Indigenous populations are probably those with highest needs because, again, when we refer back to that United Way survey that was done within the first few weeks, the number one critical need of vulnerable Calgarians was food security. And access to emergency services. So I think when we're looking at that, those are those charities that are on the front lines that are supporting those individuals. In the immediate future, those are the ones that we're seeing the greatest needs.
I think also it's important to note that, in Alberta here in particular, as we were heading into this pandemic, we were already going through some extremely difficult times in our province. And so COVID is creating new needs for sure and putting enormous financial pressure on all nonprofits. We are seeing sectors that, again, like the arts and environment and animal welfare, charities that are beloved to certainly your clients and yourselves and donors that are very much at risk of closing their doors.
Okay, we have another question from Denzel Feinberg. Reading your 2018 financial report, is it Maurer who invests your $1 trillion? Good choice, if so.
Oh, so yes, our 1 billion, actually, we have a very diverse, so I believe we have 16 currently
Yes.
managers, and they all are experts in their own asset class, but Maurer is certainly one of the companies that we currently utilize. And it's an RFP process, and our list of investors or advisors are ever evolving. Performance definitely is something we keep our eye on. But our CIO, actually, Dan, so our in-house guru of sorts, came from Maurer as well.
Mm-hmm. And it's important to note too with community foundations that we do use a process where we are engaging community. So we have a standing committee of our board of directors that is our investment committee. So Dan, in consultation with that investment committee, are constantly reviewing performance, interviewing and ensuring that benchmarks are being met and that they're best in class and meeting the diverse portfolio that we have as a policy set by the board. So Dan doesn't work in isolation. He very much has a good team internally as staff and also is working with the investment committee and our board of directors.
And what is the minimum amount that's needed to establish a fund?
Sure. This will vary again from foundation to foundation, but at Calgary Foundation, it's $10,000 as an establishing amount. That's not to say you can't establish a fund for less. It just means that we won't grant until it reaches that precipice, because a 4%, that's our current distribution amount, 4% off 10,000 is $400. So administratively, a minimum amount that we can get started with. But we have young professionals and those that are utilizing company matches over time to get to that point. We will create a fund that's less and grow it. Again, our entire focus is around inspiring philanthropy. And one important thing that wasn't mentioned in the slides, and this is different from foundation to foundation, is the Calgary Foundation does not fundraise. So we will never solicit for initial gifts when we meet with clients, your clients or donors. We are not there to encourage them to create a fund at the Calgary Foundation. What we are there is to disseminate the knowledge that we have, what we have to support them. And if it happens to work, that's great. If not, we also have contacts to commercial funds and to other ways, family foundations. We can provide resources or comparisons between that. For us, there is no one way to do it, and it absolutely does not need to be through a community foundation. But if there's something a community foundation has to offer that will help clients with their philanthropy, we're happy to do so regardless of a fund agreement.
Okay, next, you list throw funds. What are they? I know energy and resources flow throughs, but not charity yet.
So a flow-through fund at a community foundation, because most community foundations are focused on an endowment model, it is that option that is available to those donors who just aren't in it for the forever game, or not sure if they are in it for the forever game, or want to be a little bit more responsive to the charities in need. So we have a number of funds that about $61 million currently at the Calgary Foundation, which are flow through, which means they're established, it's money in, it does not grow as an endowed fund would grow over time. So that model, that image that Allison talked about, that's not flow through. It comes in, 1% cost recovery on the way in the door, and then that amount doesn't change until it's granted out. Typically, we like to see those funds granted within 3 years. So it can be great for a charity. We need a roof, our roof is leaking. If you have a flow through fund, you can actually grant a large amount all at once, whereas endowed funds go out a little bit over a long period of time, and then they see growth so that each year more and more is going out to those charities over time. So most community foundations have multiple fund structures. Midterm, you can do an endowed fund, say, for 10 years, and then start to spend down. We really have evolved and created fund structures around clients, around donors' needs. Again, there is no one size fits all, especially not in philanthropy. Every donor and every family has their different focus and their different needs, and community foundations have really grown to be responsive to that. So you'll find as many fund structures as you will find charitable goals.
Okay, thank you. What is the admin percent for your 10 plus staff and offices?
So for us, it's cost recovery fee, depends on the fund size. Like I mentioned, for flow through dollars, if it's just money in, money out, it's 1%. And if it is an endowed fund, currently funds between $10,000 and $1 million attract a 1.25% cost recovery. That's everything. That is our office. We're currently at 35 staff members at the Calgary Foundation. Is that right, Allison? 35? 37?
Yeah, 35. Yeah.
35. And that includes the 16 managers and everything that we have. So 1.25% up to $1 million. And then that goes down from there. So if you have a fund of over $1 million, or once your fund reaches over $1 million, the 1 million to 5 million attracts a different cost recovery, which is less. I believe it's 1%.
Okay.
So very, very reasonable cost recovery structure. And again, our focus is to get as much into the hands of the charities. Our pandemic relief fund and all of the efforts we're doing for community right now, we are waiving all of the fees. There is nothing coming to Calgary Foundation. We're applying our expertise and our ability to administer those funds, but 100% would be going to those charities.
The next question we have is, can you provide more information on the Alberta government matching program?
So that's a great question, and we're actually, our CEO is in a meeting with the government right now to get a little bit more detail on what that government match program will be. We actually, we are very grateful for the matching program. We did not find out about the matching program until Friday afternoon, and it was announced to the public on Sunday. And so we believe that the information will be set, or the match is such that funds that are coming into the emergency response funds will be matched. So not necessarily going out to an organization. So a donor can't choose a charity to say, this is what I want for COVID relief. I want it to go to XYZ organization, and the government match would match that dollar for dollar. It's matching contributions in and then using the granting processes of organizations like the United Ways and Calgary Foundations, and using their community knowledge to ensure that the money is getting to the right places. So we know that the cap is $2 million and it covers right across the province, and it's for United Way in both Edmonton and Calgary, community foundations in Edmonton and Calgary, as well as Lethbridge, Medicine Hat, and I believe the Wood Buffalo region as well. So across the province. And it's contributions between April 15th and May 30th that would be considered for the government match. So I imagine we will probably have more information on our website once we have some clarity in terms of the processes that they will be using once they reach their ceiling, or how they will be dividing it amongst the organizations if we exceed donations over $2 million.
Thank you, Allison. Looks like I have one last question here. My clients are not interested in local giving, rather they support international efforts. Is this something a community foundation can still support?
Janine, do you want to answer that one, or do you want me to answer that one? Oh, okay. So in terms of international giving, we are able to support international giving, providing that the organization that a donor wants to support has a Canadian registered entity. So if a donor wants to support a particular project in a different country, as long as there is an entity that is tied to that, that either has a Canadian registration or has a Canadian partner with a registration that we are able to grant to, then we are able to facilitate that gift.
Okay, well, it looks like that's all the questions we have for today. So I guess we will end the session just by saying thank you so much again, Janine and Allison, for your time today on behalf of the IFP, and to thank all of our participants for joining us. I hope everybody has a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much. If there's any other questions that come up afterwards, please don't hesitate to connect with us and we'll be happy to answer them.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay,
Just
take
a
care.
reminder that the session's being recorded, and it'll be available afterwards for members as well.
That's great. Thank you so much. Have a great day, everybody.
Take care.